Once upon a time in Scotland, there was a woman who was a tailor, and her name was Mrs. Tailor. Mrs. Tailor made the most beautiful clothes, but I don't know why she never had any money. And one winter, Mrs. Tailor wanted to make a coat. She looked around her workshop and she found some old cloth, lots of different colours, and Mrs. Tailor started to think, draw, cut and sew until she had the most beautiful coat in her hands. She put it on and she walked along the streets of Scotland and everybody said, Mrs. Tailor, that coat is beautiful. She was so happy. She wore it every day and every night, in summer and in winter. And one day the coat was very worn. Mrs. Tailor took the coat. She started to think, draw, cut and sew until she had in her hands the most incredible dress. She put it on and walked through the streets of Scotland and everybody said, that dress is incredible. She was so happy. She wore it every day and every night, in summer and in winter, and eventually the dress was very worn. Mrs. Tailor took the dress. She started to think, draw, cut and sew until she had in her hands a very special hat. And everybody said, wow, Mrs. Tailor, that hat is very special. So she wore it every day and every night, in summer and in winter. And eventually the hat was very worn. Mrs. Tailor took the hat. She started to think, draw, cut and sew until she had in her hands a very original button. And she wore it here. And everybody said, Mrs. Tailor, that button is very original. So she wore it every day and every night, in summer and in winter, and eventually the button was very worn. Mrs. Tailor took the button. She started to think, draw, cut and sew until she had in her hands this story for you